everyone. I am Dr. Gayatri, Assistant Professor at Smriti College of Pharmaceutical Education, Indore, from the Department of Pharmacology. In our today's class, we will look at the next category of hematinics, that are maturation factors. So these include vitamin B12 and folic acid. So from the name that is maturation factor, we can understand that these factors or these particular substances, that is vitamin B12 and folic acid, these are responsible for proper maturation of RBC or proper formation of RBCs. So when there is a deficiency of vitamin B12 and folic acid, this results in large red cell precursors in bone marrow as well as large and short-lived progeny in peripheral blood. So from the term precursors, we understand that the cells from which RBCs are formed, and progeny means the cells, the product of this formation. So the deficiency of vitamin B12 and folic acid results in presence of large red cell precursors in bone marrow as well as large and short-lived progeny in peripheral blood. So this condition is nothing but megaloblastic anemia. So in this condition, we have seen what megaloblastic anemia is while looking at the different types of anemia. So in this type, large red cell precursors in bone marrow are seen and large and short-lived progeny in the peripheral blood are seen. So because of this reason, vitamin B12 and folic acid are called maturation factors. So this deficiency can occur due to a basic defect in DNA synthesis. So coming to vitamin B12, cyanocobalamin and hydroxocobalamin are complex cobalt containing compounds present in the diet which are referred to as vitamin B12. So vitamin B12 is nothing but cyanocobalamin and hydroxocobalamin. So the preparations include cyanocobalamin 35 micrograms per 5 ml liquid and hydroxocobalamin 500 micrograms or 1000 micrograms injection. So dietary sources of vitamin B12 are liver, kidney, egg yolk, sea fish, meat, cheese are the main vitamin B12 containing constituents of the diet. The only vegetable source of vitamin B12 are legumes. So dietary requirement of vitamin B12 is 1 to 3 micrograms. So during pregnancy and lactation it is 3 to 5 micrograms. Methylcobalamin. Methylcobalamin is nothing but it is an active coenzyme form of vitamin B12 and it is required for the synthesis of methionine and S-adenosyl methionine that is needed for integrity of myelin. So this preparation of vitamin B12, that is methylcobalamin, is given in a dose of 1.5 mg per day for treatment of neurological defects which occur in diabetes, alcoholism and other forms of peripheral neuropathy. So this methylcobalamin is primarily used for the treatment of neurological disorders that occur in various conditions. And then the adverse effects of vitamin B12 are large doses are, even in large doses vitamin B12 is quite safe. So allergic reactions can occur on injection, probably due to contaminants, and anaphylactic reactions have also occurred on IV injections. Therefore, IV route of vitamin B12 should not be given. Uses of vitamin B12, it is used in vitamin B12 deficiency, in treatment of vitamin B12 deficiency and in prophylaxis of vitamin B12 deficiency if the patient has predisposing factors. So definite predisposing factors for development of deficiency. So if the patient has the factors which implied towards this fact that this patient will develop vitamin B12 deficiency in future. In such patients, these supplements are given in a prophylactic method. And then mega doses, that is large dose of vitamin B12 are given in neuropathies, psychiatric disorders, cutaneous sarcoid, and as a general tonic which is used in the treatment of fatigue, that is weakness, and also to improve growth. But this effect of it is not very well established. And then the next use is tobacco amblyopia. So amblyopia is a term that refers to visual defects which occur without any disturbance in the actual anatomy of the eye. So eye is intact, but the visual effect, the sight is not being normal. So there is a visual defect. So this can happen due to tobacco usage, that is called tobacco amblyopia. This can be due to the cyanide present in tobacco. So to treat this condition, hydroxycobalamin is of some benefit. So so this hydroxycobalamin, it probably, what it does is it traps the cyanide present and then it forms cyanocobalamin. So that's how this is expected to act in tobacco amblyopia. The next maturation factor is folic acid. So dietary sources of folic acid are liver, green leafy vegetables such as spinach, egg, meat and milk. It is synthesized by gut fluoride. This folic acid is synthesized in our own gut, the bacteria present in our gut, but that folic acid is largely not available for absorption. So that's why external sources of folic acid in diet are essential. Coming to daily requirements, in adults it is less than 0.1 mg, though up to 0.2 mg per day is can be allowed. And in pregnancy and lactation it is 0.8 mg per day. Preparations of folic acid, they are folic acid as Folvite and Folitab 5 mg tablet. Liquid and oral preparations, liquid oral preparations and injectables, these are usually available as combination formulations. And then oral therapy is adequate. So oral therapy of folic acid is usually sufficient for patients except in those patients in whom malabsorption is seen or who are severely ill. So in such patients this is given by IM route. So preferable route or effective route is oral therapy itself. Oral therapy is sufficient in all the patients except in those in whom malabsorption or those who are severely ill. In such patients it is given through intramuscular route. And dose includes therapeutic doses 2 to 5 mg per day and prophylactic doses 0.5 mg per day. Uses of folic acid are megaloblastic anemia. So megaloblastic anemias which are occurring due to nutritional folate deficiency and then increased demand. So the demand of folic acid is increased in certain conditions such as pregnancy, lactation, infancy, hemolytic anemia, etc. And pernicious anemia, malabsorption syndromes and anti-epileptic therapy. So in anti-epileptic therapy, megaloblastic anemia can be seen after prolonged use of phenytoin or phenobarbital. So this is treated by using folic acid, but if folic acid should not be given in high doses because this may antagonize or this may prevent the action anticonvulsant effect of these drugs. The next use is prophylaxis of folate deficiency if the patient has predisposing factors for folate deficiency. And then in treatment of methotrexate toxicity, folinic acid is used. and citrovorum factor rescue. So in this condition, while treating malignancies, high dose of methotrexate is given by IV route, and so once this high dose of methotrexate is given by IV route, immediately within half an hour to 1 hour, folinic acid is also given to rescue normal cells. So in treatment of malignancies, what is the aim? The aim is to destroy the cancer cells. So when high doses of methotrexate are given, there is a chance of destruction of normal cells also. So in order to prevent that, to rescue the normal cells, folinic acid in a dose of 1 to 3 mg intravenously is given. But then this should be given within half an hour to 1 hour. If it exceeds beyond 3 hours, it is of no effect. And then the next use is to enhance the anti-cancer efficacy of 5-fluorouracil. So folinic acid is to enhance the anti-cancer efficacy of 5-fluorouracil, folinic acid is usually administered IV along with 5-fluorouracil as an infusion. And then adverse effects, it is usually non-toxic. It does not show any toxicity or severe adverse effects. Only in case of injections, it might cause sensitivity reactions. The next drug that comes under hematinics is erythropoietin. Erythropoietin is nothing but human recombinant erythropoietin. So erythropoietin is a hormone that is responsible for formation of RBCs. So this is produced by kidneys and it is essential for normal erythropoiesis process. So when there is anemia or in which low RBC concentration is present, the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood is also reduced. So this results in decreased tissue oxygenation. So reduced RBC results in reduced oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, which results in reduced oxygen supply to the tissues. So when this happens, the kidneys secrete erythropoietin. So increased erythropoietin results in production of RBCs. So this normalizes anemia and results in normal RBC concentration. So the recombinant human erythropoietin is administered intravenously or through subcutaneous route as an injection. So it has plasma T-half of only 6 to 10 hours, but its effects last for several days. Even though its T-half is only for 6 to 10 hours, the effects of this recombinant erythropoietin last for several days. The uses of erythropoietin are treatment of anemia of chronic renal failure. So, since erythropoietin is produced by kidneys, if there is chronic renal failure, then there is reduced production of erythropoietin, because of which anemia occurs. So, in treatment of that chronic renal failure, anemia resulting from chronic renal failure, this erythropoietin is used. That is the primary indication of this recombinant human erythropoietin. And then the only symptomatic patients whose hemoglobin is less than or equal to 8 grams per dl should be considered for erythropoietin therapy. And most patients have, so in this condition, most patients have low iron stores as well. So not just RBC are less, iron stores are also less. So in order to treat that, it is good to along with erythropoietin, it is good to give oral or parenteral iron supplement also. So that causes optimum response. And then other uses are anemia, in treatment of anemia in AIDS patients who are being treated with zidovudine, and then cancer chemotherapy induced anemia, and preoperative increased blood production for autologous transfusion during surgery. So this is nothing but autologous transfusion is nothing but patients, so the patient's own blood is being taken and transfused to the patient later. So during pre-operative procedures, to increase the blood production, this erythropoietin is given. Adverse effects, it is usually non-immunogenic, and adverse effects are primarily due to sudden increase in the hematocrit, increase in blood viscosity, and peripheral vascular resistance, which happens due to correction of anemia. So what happens when erythropoietin is given? The RBC production is increased suddenly. So because of that, hematocrit also increases, hemoglobin RBC's number also increases. So because of which blood viscosity increases, blood becomes more thick, and then peripheral vascular resistance also increases. So this results in adverse effects such as increased clot formation in the AV shunts, mostly on patients who are on dialysis. And then see, we understand that clot formation can occur because blood viscosity is increasing. So obviously clot formation can result, and then hypertensive episodes, increased blood pressure happens because of increased blood viscosity and vascular resistance, and then serious thromboembolic events, that is serious clotting happens, and then occasionally seizures, and flu-like symptoms which last only for 2 to 4 hours are also seen in certain patients. So this is about hematinics and their pharmacology. Hope you all understood. Thank you.